Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, King Chitraketu meets the Lord, and text 11. Nadata Atma Hi Gunam Nadata Atma Hi Gunam Na Dosham Na Kriyapalam Na Dosham Na Kriyapalam Udasinavad Ashinaha Udasinavad Ashinaha Paravara Drig Ishvara Paravara Drig Ishvara Naratatmahi Gunam Nadoshana Kriyapalam Nadoshana Kriyapalam Udasinavad Ashinaha Paravara Drig Ishvara Naratatmahi Gunam Nadoshamna Kriya Palam Udashina Varashina Paravara Trigishvara Nadatatmahi Gunam Nadoshamna Kriya Palam Udashina Varashina Paravara Trigishvara. Please chant. Nadatatmahi Nadoshamna Kriya Palam Udasina Varasina Paravara Trigishvara Nadatatmahi Gunam Adosam Navriyana Harishara Ishara. What is Gana Aratatmahi Gunam Nadosham Na Kriyapalam Udasina Vadasina Paravara Na not Adate accepts Atma the Supreme Lord. He indeed Gunam happiness, na, not. Dosham, unhappiness, na, nor. Kriya palam, the result of any fruitive activity. Udashinavad, exactly like a neutral man. Asinaha, sitting in the core of the heart. Para avadrik, seeing the cause and effect. Ishvaraha, the Supreme Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Lord, Atma, the creator of cause and effect, does not accept the happiness and distress that result from fruitive actions. He is completely independent of having to accept a material body, and because he has no material body, he is always neutral. The living entities, being part and parcel of the Lord, possesses qualities in a minute quantity. Therefore, one should not be affected by lamentation. Responsibly, please. The Supreme Lord, Atma, the creator of cause and effect, does not accept the happiness and distress that result from fruitive actions. He is completely independent of having to accept a material body, and because he has no material body, he is always neutral. The living entities, being part and parcel of the Lord, possesses qualities in a minute quantity. Therefore, one should not be affected by lamentation. Purport. The conditioned soul has friends and enemies. He is affected by the good qualities and the faults of his position. The Supreme Lord, however, is always transcendental, because he is the Ishvara, the Supreme Controller. He is not affected by duality. It may therefore be said that he sits in the core of everyone's heart as a neutral witness of the causes and effects of one's activities, good and bad. We should also understand that Udashina, neutral, does not mean that he takes no action. Rather, it means that he is not personally affected. For example, a court judge is neutral when two opposing parties appear before him, but still he takes action as the case warrants. To become completely neutral, indifferent to material activities, we should simply seek shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Neutral Person. Maharaj Chitraketu was advised that remaining neutral in such trying circumstances as the death of one's son is impossible. Nevertheless, since the Lord knows how to adjust everything, the best course is to depend upon Him and do one's duty in devotional service to the Lord. In all circumstances, one should be undisturbed by duality, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Karmanyevadikaraste matpaleshu kadachana ma karma palahetur bur mate sangostva karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. One should execute one's devotional duty, and for the results of one's actions, one should depend upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jnanatamrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Taranti Swaparantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Simjivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijina Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Raganatam Vitam Simjivam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sruta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vinepacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastitare Sitarine Hare Krishna to devotees. I'm in no way qualified to speak in such a collection of exalted Vaishnavas, but I humbly seek your blessings that I may be able to say some words which help to illuminate the text. But, without the mercy of the Vaishnavas, then I could do nothing. So please pray for me. So here currently in our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, we can give a little bit of context. Bhagavatam is one of these books, when you try and go back to the start of the story, you end up just going further and further back till there's actually no end. So we have to pick a point to start the story. But basically there's a great battle between demigods and the demons, the Asuras and Asuras. And the demons, they call forth this incredible Asura. He's huge, and he's a massive trident, and he's grotesque and ugly, and they're firing all these weapons at him, and they're just bouncing off. He's sort of indestructible, it seems. And the name of this demon is Vritrasura, which actually means the covered demon, because it turns out later, as he's fighting with Indra, he starts to give Indra these incredible instructions regarding how he should do his duty but remain attached to the lotus feet, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just the instructions which revealed that actually he's not so much a demon, but actually a very, very self-realized soul. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a book of questions and answers, because ultimately all the best information we get in life comes as a result of a question. We don't ask, we don't get. So we have to develop that curiosity, and Srimad Bhagavatam is giving us this curiosity. We see, Parikshit Maharaj, he's cursed to die, and he has 7 days. This is the context. He has 7 days, and he knows his death is coming. So he sits on the banks of the Ganges and decides to fast, and hear Hadikatha, hear about Lord Krishna, completely absorb himself. And so Shukadeva Goswami is a immensely self-realized sage. He's there, and so Parikshit Maharaj asks him, like, what should I hear? I'm a dying man. What should anyone hear about, particularly for someone at the time of death? Then what should we hear about? And Shukadeva Goswami, he answers very quickly. One chapter in Bhagavatam, he basically answers, you should hear about and glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so Parikshit's maybe thinking, well, I've got 7 more days, So then he has to ask questions, He starts asking all these questions, and that's how Bhagavatam comes. So one lesson we can get from this in spiritual life is we have to be always eager and thirsty to get more nectar. It's like this. Later on, when Shukadeva Goswami is narrating this pastime of Vritrasura, then Parikshit Maharaj is very curious. How can this supposed demon actually have all this transcendental knowledge? So then Shukadeva Goswami goes deeper into the story and illustrates who Vritrasura was in a previous birth. And we find out that Vritrasura was actually Maharaj Chitraketu. Maharaj Chitraketu was a very materially very well off. He had described 10,000 wives, maybe even more, 10 million, yes. But he had one problem, and no son. And particularly for people in the sort of royal dynasties, etc., having a son is very, very important. So he's very, very much anxiety over getting this son. And it so happens that there's some saintly people, and Gira Muni is coming by and gives him the benediction to have a son. And he's very jubilant. Yes, I've got this son. But there's a catch. Because in the material world, there's always a catch. You think, oh, I finally got it. I've got this job. I've got this nice family situation. But there's always a catch. And the main catch in the material world, there's many other sub-catches, little things. But the main catch is ultimately is all temporary. So no matter how good a situation is, it's limited. And we see the way that spiritual mathematics works is like, you have a happy situation and you add some temporality to it. You add the fact that it's limited, then that happiness plus the temporary nature actually results in unhappiness overall, which may seem a little bit depressing, but sometimes reality is a little bit depressing. But and so for this reason, the name of the son that he's blessed to have is Harsha Shoka. And this means the one who will simultaneously give you a lot of jubilation and also a lot of lamentation. Because often it's the things that make us most happy materially, which also causes the most suffering. Because the material world is working in such a way as to bring us to realization that ultimately we can only be happy when we're engaged in devotional service to Krishna, because this is the one thing which is which is eternal, swalpamapyasa dharmasya, that there's no loss or diminution in this endeavor. So he has his son by the name of Harshashoka, who then he's subsequently poisoned by some of the other jealous wives. Sometimes if you have multiple wives, there can be some, typically any circumstance, there can be some animosity. So he's in great lamentation and he's very distraught. So these great sages, Narada Muni and Angira Muni, they bring back his son to life, And here we have this son, Harshashoka, is actually giving transcendental instructions to his father. Oftentimes we're not inclined, perhaps fathers are not inclined to hear transcendental instructions from their sons, but if you just come back from the dead, maybe you give him more more ear. And so basically the first thing he said was, he's been called back. I don't know what it's like. Well, I probably do. I've just forgotten what it's like to have to leave your body and we go floating wherever you are. He's been called back by Narada Muni. Narada Muni is saying, "Come, your father is very distraught. Come back, please. Please, your father is very distraught." And he comes back. Which father? I've had so many fathers. So many mothers. Which one? You tell me. Because this is he was just with that work father for a very short time. So we developed such all-encompassing aspects of these relationships. We think this one relationship I have is all in all. But when you gain a slightly higher vision, like Harshashoka had, you can see that he gives one analogy. It's like the flowing of a river. There's just this constant change. The water in the river is never the same. So you see these relationships he had based on the bodily concept were always changing, because the Vaishnava wants to be loving to everyone. So very much we should be loving, or we should have deep and meaningful relationships with our family members. This is Krishna consciousness is a movement of the heart, and so ultimately need to be personal. But the point is to understand that these relationships, if they're on the bodily platform, then they're somewhat they're temporary, they're limited, and they're not really connecting. We see that there's some great prayers by Queen Kunti in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, and she's praying to Lord Krishna for him to remove her conception of seeing her family members as simply relatives, because our family members are great devotees, are 5 sons of the Pandavas, who are very, very intimate associates with Lord Krishna. Arjuna is the one who's decided Bhagavad Gita will be spoken to. So having attachment to such saintly persons is not at all bad, but it's being fixed in the conviction that these people are simply my son, you know? This is somewhat limited. We have to see the transcendental nature of every person. Maybe you engage still in some external formalities, but we have to have the higher vision. This verse here is continuing the instructions, if I'm not mistaken, continuing the instructions given by Harsha. And so basically, he's describing some of the teachings that we see in Bhagavad Gita about the position of the Supreme Lord and the position of the living entity. And there's a very important point here that he's making, that the living entities, being part and parcel of the Lord, possesses qualities in a minute quantity. And this is one of the fundamental teachings that we get from the Bhagavad Gita, but often find many people who've not read Prabhupada's Gita, they don't so much get this realization. Because Prabhupada, we don't read the Gita directly. We read the Gita through Prabhupada's purports, because it's very difficult to enter this knowledge unless we follow in the footsteps of the Acharya. So Prabhupada presents it in such a way that we can actually get to the conclusion. You know, we see throughout, you know, and there's chapters entitled Karma Yoga or Buddhi Yoga, etc. And Prabhupada is just talking about Bhakti the whole way through, because Prabhupada is seeing the higher vision. And there's also, you get some verses in elsewhere in the Bhagavatam where you look at the word for word and Krishna is not mentioned. And then you look at the translation and Krishna is mentioned. And so some disciples of Prabhupada, they asked him, you know, Prabhupada, how is it that you can add Krishna there? He says, well, the Mayavadis, they take away Krishna when Krishna is there. So I will add Krishna. And this is Prabhupada's vision, is he's actually understanding the real essence of the verse, and he's giving that to us. Otherwise, we'd be so lost. So the living entities, they possess the qualities of the Lord in a minute quantity. This is very important. The Lord is he's Bhagavan, you know, Sadiswara Bhagavan. He's full in 6 opulences. There's renunciation, there's beauty, wealth, fame, power. Strength, power, no. Renunciation, beauty, wealth, fame, strength, knowledge. This is slightly ironic, I forgot that one. And so these are the 6 opulences that Krishna has in full. But every living entity possesses some of these opulences in a minute quantity. And therefore we possess minute independence. We have some aspect of free will. And this is what makes a relationship with Krishna meaningful. Because it's very difficult to be in a meaningful relationship unless you can do so voluntarily. And this is Krishna's mercy, actually. We wonder why it is that we're in this material situation, you know. Doesn't seem so nice sometimes. But ultimately, it's Krishna's mercy because it's allowing us to enter into a relationship with him voluntarily. And so we use our free will, we use our independence to then surrender our free will. This is the beauty. And the other point he's making in this verse is that as the Supreme Lord is not affected by happiness and distress, then similarly as we possess his qualities in a minute quantity, then we also should not be affected by these material happiness and distress. You know, we should tolerate tam statiksha vibharata. However, it's very interesting. Prabhupada in the purport, he goes on to clarify that that it's very difficult for the conditioned soul to remain neutral. But nonetheless, we should simply seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Neutral Person. So even, we see oftentimes in spiritual life, we can know something, but we cannot so much act upon it, you know. We know we're not this body, but we still act upon the bodily concept. Uh, there's one very nice phrase we can use. We can fake it till you make it. A nice phrase. So we see a lot of what we do in spiritual life. It's somewhat faking it. Maybe sounds a bit harsh, but we're doing it without full realization. The curtains open in the morning, and we offer obeisances. We think this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, I can only speak for myself, but I do not have full realization that the deities are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes you get little glimpses, but I'm not so advanced. But we can definitely pray to them for that realization. And when they're dressed as beautifully as this, then it's very nice. But nonetheless, even if we don't have this realization, we still engage in the action of bowing down, of offering our obeisances. And there's so many things we do in spiritual life. By going through the activities and taking shelter of those who have actually realized in this way, then the realization does come. We were just yesterday we were listening to some Prabhupada memories, and one Mataji, a disciple of Prabhupada, she was describing Prabhupada coming in for Govindam prayers from deity greetings. He said it's the same activity we do every morning. The curtains open, the song comes on, they offer dandavats. He said when she saw Prabhupada doing it, it gave it so much more significance, because Prabhupada is a fully self-realized soul, and so when he's actually offering obeisances, he's in full cognition that he's doing it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's having a relationship with the deities. And just by seeing that, then we can become inspired. So, yes, we must follow in the footsteps of the pure devotees. The other aspect highlighted in this verse is the neutrality of the Lord. Prabhupada compares him to a Supreme Court judge who is not particularly personally involved with either party, but he's just trying to execute the fair judgment. And this is one aspect we get. But when one becomes a devotee of Krishna, Krishna is sometimes inclined to break his own rules. There's a famous story in the Battle of Kurukshetra. He promises, I won't, I won't fight, I won't pick up any arms. But then Arjuna is being thoroughly attacked by Bhishmadev, the mighty warrior Bhishmadev. And so Krishna, he says, I'm going to forget my promise here. He picks up a chariot wheel. He's Partha Sati. And there's multiple reasons he's described for doing this. He's described that he wanted to engage in this battle with such a great warrior as Bhishmadev. There's a lot of rasa there, the ghastly rasa as well, but also he wanted to prove that, and Bhishma wanted to prove that Krishna will always protect his devotee, and he will even go against his promises in order to protect his devotee. It's very dear. As we see Krishna, he says in the one of the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavad Gita, Machita Matkita Prana Bodayantas Parasparam Katayantas Chamams Nitya Tushanti Cha Ramanti Cha. Like this, something like this. He says, the thoughts of my pure devotees always dwell in me, because they're constantly engaged in my devotional service. Such self-realized souls, they derive great pleasure and benefit from always engaging in discussion with one another about me. It's very interesting. This is one of the verses right at the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. There's different verses throughout that are seen as like the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Some people say it's Manmanabhava Madbhakto, some people say it's Sarvadharma Prityaja, but this Chatur Shloki, it's definitely very important. It establishes a lot of Siddhanta, a lot of philosophical conclusions. And ultimately, it establishes Krishna's reciprocation with us. So he says, the thoughts of my pure devotees, they dwell within me. And we see actually, with Bhishmadev, there's one example that is described in the Mahabharata. after the battlefield, just very shortly after the battle of Kurukshetra, then Krishna is staying in the palace of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and Yudhishthira comes to his door one day, and he goes in and he sees Krishna. Now, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He sees Krishna deeply engaged in meditation. And he thinks, this is just incredible, because we engage in meditation in order to connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But like, if you're already God, you don't really need to connect to God, do you? And then I'm not entirely sort of the exact details, but I think Yudhishthira Maharaj asks him, what it is that he's doing, and he describes how Bhishmadev is currently lying on the battlefield on a bed of arrows. The most, in some sense, glorious of deaths. He's not dead yet because he has been given the benediction to choose when it is that he leaves his body. But he's constantly, simply remembering Krishna. It's all is on his mind. Simply absorbed in meditation upon Krishna. And therefore Krishna is simply absorbed in meditation upon him. The thoughts of his pure devotees dwell in him. And so he says, he asks Arjuna to declare loudly, Kuntaya pratijanihi nami bhakta pranashati, that Arjuna, please declare loud, my devotee, he never perishes. So as soon as we engage in devotional service, then Krishna gets personally involved in our lives. Like Krishna, he's a supreme neutral, He's described how, there's Krishna, and then he has all these expansions. First there's, Lord Balaram, then the Chatavyuha, and then Lord Shankar. And then the material world is just so far away from Krishna, in some sense. It seems like, it's an expansion of an expansion of an expansion. And Krishna, he's aloof. He's just in Vrindavan. And this is one aspect. But then when one begins to render devotional service, and Krishna gets personally involved. Krishna is personally involved in your spiritual life. And everyone else, they're just getting the results of their actions, based the modes of material nature, dealing with all of that. Krishna, it's a perfect system. He doesn't need to start thinking, but and because when we take shelter of a pure devotee, so like Srila Prabhupada is so dear to Krishna, that's what we say. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale. He's very, very dear to Krishna on this earth. And so we take shelter of him. The whole system of parampara is that we become dear, we please our spiritual master. And this is a secret. It's stated, Prabhupada writes in one purport, the secret to success in spiritual life is the satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master. It's a very nice sentence. There's lots of S's. Because the thoughts of Krishna's pure devotees always dwell within Krishna. Okay? The thoughts of his pure devotees dwell within him. Krishna says this. Okay? And so, if we become dear to our spiritual master, we become dear to Srila Prabhupada, they may begin to think of us. They might be pleased with our service. So the thoughts of us dwell within them, and their thoughts dwell within Krishna. So then Krishna ends up seeing us. And this is how the parampara works, is that we simply endeavor to please our spiritual master, and Krishna is directly pleased with us. We don't have to. We don't go to Krishna directly. We have no qualification whatsoever to go to Krishna directly. And how can we even offer any services of any merit? We think, oh yes, I've got a nice voice, I will sing nice kirtan. It's like, really, there's there's personalities which their musical talent is billions of light years beyond what we could possibly conceive. We think, oh, I can cook this nice preparation, offer to Krishna. It's like Srimad Radharani cooks a different preparation every single time she cooks for Krishna, and she's been cooking since time immemorial. How can we possibly offer something that Krishna's going to prefer to what someone could already offer? But what we can offer is that we can simply try and please those who are already dear to Krishna. We can simply try and serve them, and this is this is the essence of Bhakti Yoga. Is Prabhupada was asked once. He says, one devotee asked, like, Prabhupada, where is everything in the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world? So where is pride? Where is pride in the spiritual world? Because here's many pride. Prabhupada says, you're proud of how many times you're the servant. You know, I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. This is where, because because the spiritual world is inverted. You know, that's how it should be. Here it's sort of it's perverted. Um, yeah, the more times you're the servant, then the greater you are, and then the more people's good wishes you have. So we have to make that a constant meditation. Is how I can serve. And we see here that in one sense, Krishna, he loses his neutrality. Because Krishna is very, very personal. You know, the whole of this process of Bhakti Yoga is personal. You know, we call it there's a process, a science of self-realization, etc. But it's not that we can just do X and get Y. It's not so cause and effect. Because ultimately, Krishna benedicts whatever. You know, it's like we can do everything. We can, have a very good schedule, get up early, chant nice rounds. But Krishna is not going to bestow the holy, we cannot actually taste the holy name unless the holy name reveals itself to us. And this only comes when ultimately at the discretion of Krishna or at the intense, desire of his pure devotees. And so it's not within our control. So in this sense, it's not a cause and effect process. But the real secret is to just try and remain in this humble position of servitude and be in a position to receive the mercy. Because the mercy is coming, but if we're not ready to receive it, then it may, float by us. And so, this personal aspect of the science of Bhakti Yoga is just simply understand how to please the Vaishnavas. Then everything comes from this. To please the devotees, then if this is our priority, then everything else is downhill, Hearing, chanting, serving the Vaishnavas is... so maybe I will, as I mentioned at the start, that the spiritual life is a series of questions and answers. So I'll pause here, and if there's any some comments or questions or corrections, I'd much appreciate. Prabhu. I wonder if they had electronic microphones at the banks of the Ganges when Bhagavatam was being recited. Loud voices.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Actually, on that, I can't remember where I was hearing this, but somebody was asking that about in the kirtans that Lord Chaitanya was performing. How could you hear? Because today we need these microphones or even several different singers at one time. But because of the purity of the heart of everybody that was there, then the transcendental sound vibration was transmitted through this way. It wasn't going directly through the material ears, but straight into the heart. On that
part, I also they had good organization as well. They knew what melodies were singing, and they had leaders, different groups. But anyway, that's a different topic for a different.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for a very nice class. In this purport, was reading that we should perform our prescribed duties. I'm just wondering, we're all very much individuals. How to know what our duty is in life?
Please, the spiritual master. We have to understand that when we're engaging in devotional service, there's the Bhagavad, the Bhagavad Gita has this yoga ladder. There's so many different types of yoga activities we can do. Initially, we've got so many desires, but still we can offer something to Krishna. Beyond that, we can actually just try and work for Krishna, but there's still we want some reciprocation, etc. And there's these different layers. But Prabhupada is very clear that we don't have time so much to go through all these. In some sense, we see elements of them, but Prabhupada wants us to come to this platform of, Sarva Dharmam Prityaja, that just give up all these other varieties of religion, just surrender, because, it's Kali Yuga. There's mercy here right now, but it's we can't take risks. We can't go the long route. He said take the elevator, don't take the stairs. So ultimately, our duty is service to the spiritual master, and we can also say, what does the spiritual master want, etc., etc. But we're reading, actually, it was in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we were reading a couple of weeks ago. The Prabhupada says that the desire of every spiritual master is to spread the glories of Krishna. And so different, spiritual masters have different moods and etc. But none of them are going to be disappointed if you engage in Sankirtan. And there's many forms of Sankirtan, but this is maybe a slightly not so much a balanced answer. There's many more elevated and advanced devotees who give you a proper understanding of prescribed duties, but in the intricacies. But in my humble opinion, that if we have the opportunity to just engage fully in Sankirtan, then the nitty-gritty details work themselves out. But perhaps other devotees have more insights into these. No. If not, then Vasi Prabhu had a question. Or no? Okay. Mother Vrinda, please.
When we start in our spiritual life, then we don't know anything, and therefore we don't know anything, so we just follow, and in that way we gain realization and knowledge how to navigate the material energy, control the mind, and so on. And then, but later on, then we may continue that way, with one service the rest of the whole of their life. But others, they may have a talent that kind of becomes more and more prominent, and in their heart and mind, and they take to, because that ability is given by Krishna, they go on to, in their maturity, engage in that, pursue that as their service, engaging that ability in Krishna's service, because it's like something can do naturally, and it's not like that. But always glorifying the Lord in some way, shape, or form is everyone's prescribed duty in that sense. I don't know if that puts light on it.
Maybe
well.
could I ask, is this something that the individual personally realizes, or they should just be instructed to?
Well, the devotee always has sadhu sangha, the Shraddha Sangha Sangha Bhajana Kriya. So there's like, is it Keshava Bharati Maharaj? He says that before he makes any decision, he asks 10 Vaishnavas. So
You get 10 different opinions.
yeah, but maybe Krishna with a heart will see some answers will resonate and others may not, or by trial and error, or Krishna's the super soul in the heart. So according to time, place, and circumstance, one knows one's own time, place, and circumstance better than anyone else. But taking direction can give more light on it, or more direction, like that. By taking association to devotees, then Krishna is always pleased. Like that we don't. In case because the danger is that we act out of false ego. So, like
the association of devotees is such a rarity because it gives us this this sort of higher vision.
Yeah, the guru may give a certain instruction, but we depend on sadhu sangha to help us fulfill that because the guru's not always around.
Yeah, it's also very nice. Just briefly, that verse I was quoting from the Chatur Shloka to the Gita. The second part is that these devotees they gain great, pleasure and enlightenment from conversing about me.
Yeah.
It's so nice that Krishna notices this. Like Krishna also gets pleasure when we're engaging in nice sadhu sangha.
Yeah, it's always this nice point that you made, and that it's always important to discuss rather than passive hearing. Because if we can hear Bhagavatam class, but unless there's some discussion or questions and so on, then we can churn and get a deeper understanding. But if it's just passive, then it can remain superficial. So it's this Krishna Dharma and Chitamani Dharma, they have this system of discussing Bhagavatam, and it's done in such a way that there's appreciation for the person who's speaking. You express that when you express gratitude, and then the person speaking feels encouraged, and you give your insights and so on. And it really kind of, because when there's no straight answer, there's no kind of how can I explain? If something is not so well understood, then by that discussion, Krishna appears as the Vard, as the conclusive truth. Whereas if one's just trying to put one's own idea or trying to be, they think what they out of false ego thinking they're right and trying to impose that on others, or like that, then the conclusive truth won't appear. Krishna won't appear. So there's different types of discussion. So when it's in the mode of goodness like that, just then the conclusion to Krishna's the conclusive truth can appear.
Yeah, I guess very nice. We use the analogy churning.
Yeah.
Churning the milk and then a lump of butter emerges.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're conversing and enlightening each other about me. So this is that kind of discussion where everybody has an angle of vision that they can share. Because Krishna's in their heart also, so, and they have their experience. A wise man knows the things, he knows everything, so we can learn from everybody. But there's always check and balance of Guru, Sadhu, Sastra. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki. All of you ki. Jai.